Hello, everyone. It's Mr. Nobody coming back at you. It's been a while since I've talked to you, and I'm sorry about that. I know I haven't been able to put up things recently. That's why I put up a whole lot of videos in the time leading up to just the last couple of weeks. So I have a deepness amount of content out there, and the reason is my own stories are sort of, I mean, it's not more interesting than anyone's. It's not more circuitous than anyone's, maybe than some people. Um, but after graduate school, instead of doing the normal sort of thing that I was expecting, continuing into my field or staying in academics, instead I went and started a business. And so I ran that business for 12 years. And then a few months ago, I sold that business and retired from it. And that opened up a new world of just starting over and saying, all right, time to reinvent myself. What am I going to do with myself now? How am I going to earn a living? Where's going to be my place? And one thing that I thought about doing, I applied to many kinds of jobs. I tried following up things related to what I had been working on. I really wanted to get into something different. I was working in a more of a blue collar field, and as someone who has also got this other side to them who really likes talking about things and intellectual stuff and education, I thought, well, maybe I can get out into that field a little bit. I actually really enjoyed the the working world and the business world, and there was a lot of things about it that I really appreciated, that are part of why I went into it and decided to get out of the highfalutin academic world. But I'll go into that some other time. So I really treasured that experience. So I was trying to find, well, which direction should I go? And I talked to various people. One person I talked to is my aunt, someone who I really like. I wanted to ask her about her teaching experience because she'd spent time teaching, and I thought maybe this is something I should think about. I'd never really thought about teaching in younger grades. I had been planning originally to teach college, but I just wanted to ask her, what was it like? What was that experience like? And what I found out was schools really needed subs, and I said, well, I guess this is a way to earn money and maybe even see if this is something I might be interested in. So for the last few weeks, I have actually been doing substitute teaching at a local classical academy. And the truth is, I have been enjoying it immensely. It has been tons of fun. I've been learning a lot of stuff. It has been great getting out and meeting all sorts of people, especially the kids. At this point, I have now done substitute teaching all the way from first grade up through eighth grade. I wasn't sure that I was quite ready to tackle the high school experience, and it's the elementary schools around here that need the most help. And actually, the elementary school I've been working with has like 3 locations, 3 separate schools that feed into the upper schools. So I've been spending a lot of time there. I spent this entire week working at the same school, moving around to different grades. The week before that, I spent 3 days just doing the same sixth grade class. And it has been an amazing experience. It's been an eye-opening experience. I actually, even just seeing the inside of how the schools actually work has been really interesting. A few things that I will say that I've learned from my experience. One, phones should just be forbidden at school. So actually, they are forbidden to have in class or use at the school that I'm at. And having spent some time there, like bringing a phone would be like letting kids have bring in pistols. Like it's the worst idea in the world. Like definitely kids should not have phones when they're at school. So that's one thing that just became abundantly clear to me early on. Another thing that I realized is, wow, kids are so open-hearted. They so much want to like you and want you to like them and want to impress you. And also, they're very eager and willing to be bossed around by an adult. Like they still have that bit in their brain that is just like, adults are here to take care of me. Like I assume you will take care of me, and I assume you will also tell me what I need to do, and that I can impress you and perform for you. And so it's just interesting to see those instincts. And it's so easy, actually, once you kind of understand how kids work, to just step into a situation, even with kids you never met, and just be like, I know what sort of creatures you are. I know how you work. And because of that, I can literally step in here and I'm immediately in control of you. and I can also be a good friend of yours and someone who you'll rely on. And that's such a strange experience. Adults are so much more careful, so much slower, so much more difficult. Children are, they're children. They need that. They need to have that built into them so that they can be cared for by the community. It makes me think of Cesar Millan and his dog show. So much of what he says about dogs is entirely true about children. The way that you approach them. You step in, show them that you're the alpha, and they'll be happier. They'll get the things done they need to do. They'll feel secure. They'll realize they can come to you about things. You want to make the world comprehensible. This was something too that I really learned is it's not all about just like positivity, and even with like kids and people telling you about how to be a teacher will tell you, well, you're not there to be their friend, you're there to be their teacher. You can be a teacher that they love, but as a teacher, you are there to help them. You are there to teach them something. You are an authority figure, and you are the alpha of their pack when you're there. And actually, they need you to be that alpha. They suffer if you are not the alpha. And when the world gets chaotic, this is something else I got from Cesar Millan. He said, you're letting your dogs run crazy. It's not making you happy. It's not making you like them, which is hard on them, and it's not making them happy with themselves. So actually, your idea of being nice to them is actually just stressing all of you out and making all of you miserable. And kids are very much that way, and following some of the principles that they said, it was amazing. They were doing a test on me at the junior high where they literally just dumped me into 3 different classes back to back. Art, history, and computer science, none of which I had ever taught in my life and didn't have any specialty in whatsoever. And they just had me walk in the room while the kids were already seated there and just have the teacher walk out and try to take over this class. And, it was really fun. It was really interesting. And I did just follow some of the advice that I said, come in, make the position clear, make the relationship clear, make the expectations clear, identify the people you kind of need to keep an eye on, use certain strategies to kind of take their energy and channel it, and maybe even get them on your side and actually helping you. And then everything will go great, and everybody will be happy with everybody, and you won't be fighting each other the whole time. And it was amazing how that came together. I remember, like with the history class, within the first 4 minutes, I realized I had won the battle, and we had all clicked, and we were going to have a wonderful, productive hour. And they answered all my questions. They had great questions of their own. They engaged with the material. We covered everything we needed to cover. And it was literally as unprepared as I walk in having no idea what the class was even about, not having seen any of the material. Kids are already there ready, just waiting. And all of a sudden, the hardest thing for me was just I'm going to turn on whatever the slideshow is, and I don't even know what's going to be on the slide. I don't know what it is I'm going to be teaching. How am I going to figure that out? And how am I going to read ahead to answer any questions or know what I'm talking about enough to also be in control of the class? But you know what? It all worked out great. You got to roll with things. And the skills I had already developed up to that point proved very useful. Not that I'm fantastic. I'm not actually great at asserting and playing that social role of being socially dominant and in control. That's not really who I am. I'm not a socially dominant person. I'm not really a natural alpha. I'm very much a beta male. I very much, spend a lot of time, as well as being the class clown, very much cringing in the back and trying not to get, knocked every which way by everybody, and not really expecting everyone to pay attention to me, having to fight to get people to pay attention to me if they did at all. Some other things I've learned from teaching. One thing I really learned is the lower levels of being a teacher and the people that are there, they're there because they just love kids. They want to be parenting. That's what teaching is. Up, especially kindergarten through 1st and 2nd grade, it's kind of teaching. It's just parenting, especially at the younger ages. It's just collective group parenting. It's frankly, it's in just a modern formalized iteration of what people have been doing for thousands and thousands of years. And the people who do it because they want to do it and because they're just great at it. And frankly, the grades that I am the most intimidated at are the younger grades. The kids are incredibly sweet. They're also difficult. They require a lot of individual attention and investment, and you don't get that far. You're just trying to put huge amounts of effort into accomplishing very small little victories. And they're the ones that could probably frustrate you the most, and they're also the ones who want to hug you the most, and are the most innocently trusting and loving in that way too. And it's funny because even just watching the kids go in, I saw with those younger grades, like every single kid wants to hug their teacher. They have a thing set up where, they can all decide what they want to do, but all those kids want to hug their teachers. They love their teachers. Their teachers is literally mothering them. It's in the younger grades, like in so many things, they say preschool teachers like 99.99% women. In those younger grades, it's almost all women. And wow, are they talented? Like I said, that is where I feel the most intimidated, the most out of my depth. When I went to the older grades and some of those things, like, well, this is mostly just about the subject matter. Well, a subject matter is finite. It's not that complex. I can master it. I can read the page out of the textbook and answer the questions. I've got guides with the answers to the, worksheets that they have to do. I can read up on something. Those are very limited little fields. Now, what is not limited is people. People are the complicated thing. Little children. Now that's infinite complexity. And the social complexity of managing them, in my opinion, and the skills of figuring out how do I work with each one of these individual kids with their individual needs, and they really need you at that time of life, and ask a lot from you. To me, that's like, whoa, every single one of your kids is like a graduate level subject matter course that needs to be covered, and somehow you can just walk in and scoop these kids right up and be totally confident and know what you're doing. And so to me, yeah, it's those younger age teachers. I don't know how they do it. There are some people are just born with a genius for working with people, and especially for working with children. The amount of patience, like that's the sort of thing where it's like, I don't know if I can learn that. I don't know if I can acquire that. I have great confidence in myself to learn almost anything, but I genuinely am not sure that I am capable of learning or acquire that. I feel like some people are just, it's like seeing someone who's just an absolute talent, and you're just like, I could practice the rest of my life, and I don't know if I'll ever be as good at it as you seem to be effortlessly. So it's given me a lot of respect for those younger age teachers. I found that once you get to like third grade, that's where the tide starts to turn. It was a little easier for me. They were a little more focused and a little more settled, a little less demanding on the human side of things, and we could get into the material more. I had a ton of fun in sixth grade with those kids. Because they're still children, which I actually really like that about them. But they've really got they're bringing a lot to the table now. They've really got some ideas about things. They can really engage with you. Anyway, as I said, so that is my opinion. It was funny because I do very much have this theory. Well, there's certain things that are built into us innately, the sort of innate technology. It's the stuff that's so important and so stable that it basically became kind of fixed into us as humans. And then it's neat, everything that we've built kind of obscures it, but it's all extrapolated from that. We can do this thing because really it's something we can extrapolate and iterate out from this innate skill that we have. So having seen what these schools are like, where they're doing fantastic stuff, I look at it and say, okay, I can see the innate thing as you as a human, the built-in technology, this built-in talent and brilliance, and then I can see how, yeah, you could turn that into a whole job, into a whole formalized structure. You get the people who are the best at it, who are really passionate about it, have the greatest interest, and really find it rewarding and fun. And you can build this whole formalized structure with it that does that work that is really a very primordial work. It's a very ancient work. But it has been neat to see it. It has been neat to discover it. It has been interesting. It's funny because as someone who's used to being the CEO of my own company, to suddenly be the lowest level person where it's like, hey, these second graders know more about what's going on than I do. I don't even know my way around the building. I'm just here to watch them at recesses and monitor them at lunch. And I've been doing doing things like that. Earlier this week, I monitored like 5 different recesses plus a lunch and a couple more after that. And so, that's how I spent my day. And it's been interesting just to take the plunge back into the bottom of the systems, but it's a very different place. Everyone's super nice. There's wonderful community supportiveness. Very different from what I experienced in the entrepreneurial world. The entrepreneurial world is very interesting. It has its own distinct character, and it's a very different character from like the white collar world. And then I would also say this teaching world is its own thing too. Has a very, very distinct character. It is very communitarian. I would assume it would have the most in common with other types of charity work and service work and things like that. The entrepreneurial world is a little more, you're the captain of your ship, trying to make allies, figuring out who to work with, managing relationships, competing, adventuring in a way, and not near as much of the like support and friendly. Like I would say it reminds me of being in a family. It's a much more family atmosphere, and I can see how it would attract people who really like that. They like feeling like they're around the family. And I realized, I realized it's just like, oh, these people here because they just love being around the kids. They're getting a lot from this. This is just where they want to be. And if you're someone who's good at it, it's not really going to be that difficult. And you could do other things, and you could probably do other things that would earn more money for you, but why would you want to? You wouldn't want to be there. Whereas it is a ton of fun to be there. And if you're the sort of person who enjoys the kids, even just watching kids run around and play on a playground is enriching. It makes you happy. It's fun to watch. It's interesting. I think it would be good for people. It would probably be a good thing for everyone to some degree to put in some amount of time, even just working as like the teacher's assistant or a paraprofessional, just to see it. And just to sometimes when you are a kid and then you're growing up and you're becoming an adult and you're pushing into all that world, you don't always. These days we get so career focused with our look towards things, we're kind of forgetting the people side of life, which frankly is like the thing it's all for. It really is the biggest part of life. We're spending lots of time preparing people for fields of study and for careers and forgetting to spend time preparing them to be human, preparing them for the vocation of being in a family, for the vocation of having a family. And doing this, and I know some people are, and some people do babysitting or go help with, groups of various kinds where you do get to have that experience. But having done this, I realized, boy, this would have really been helpful for me. I've actually learned things about parenting and improved, I feel like, my skills at it. I've been a parent for 10 years, but I feel like having to do things with all of these different kids and such a big group of kids makes you really learn lessons really quickly because you're forced to. And it made me think, this is actually probably something everyone should have some education on, because a lot of people are going to grow up to be parents. It's good for people to grow up to be parents. Civilization doesn't keep going. I feel like we used to put more effort into preparing people for this and saw being part of a family and having a family as an important vocation. In some ways, we've taken apart a lot of the roles of the family and hollowed it out by formalizing them and distributing to other things. So it's like, well, things that used to be the family provided, well, now we can have the school do that for you. The government can provide it in this way. There's a structure, a formalized structure, and you can pay them money and they'll take care of that. And that's even lots of other services. The clothes that you get, you used to have to rely on your family for that. But now I can just go to a store and buy that and have a very different relationship to my clothes and to how I get them. Lots of the objects, your furniture, so many things. Also our food, we've changed things so that now we're very restaurant focused. We don't cook that much for ourselves. We don't cook that much for each other. Well, that used to be a big part of our family experience. For for uncountable amounts of years, this practice of eating together and the gathering and preparation of the family meal and sharing it together was like a linchpin of human society for untold eons. And we just sort of farmed it out. And change the nature of the relationship. And it's like, well, we got a bunch of food that we like, which is making us all kind of fat. I know that it has for me. I'm not looking as great as I should. I've been being a little bit lazy. I've let myself drift. It's been a stressful couple of months trying to figure out what I'm doing with myself. So I haven't taken the greatest care of myself. And there's the stability and structure you do get from having those home and family meals. But I don't think, like with so many other things, we really either understood or thought through the total consequences of changing this part of the way human life is structured. This is the case. We've changed so much. Technology has changed so much about how we approach the world. And in so many areas where like we just changed and we threw stuff out or we substituted something new. And because that thing was so ancient, it never really we weren't really aware of everything it was doing or how it would affect us or how changing it would affect us. And so we couldn't really think through all the consequences of it. But it is true, like I said, that there's things like just the eating together of humans in the way that we used to, and the preparing it and doing that together and sitting down for it. I mean, that's not just like something that people did in the 50s. That's something people have been doing around the world for time out of mind. And we've changed it. We've come up with new ways of handling things. We still do it some. But we've changed the way we engage in one of the most basic experiences of us as humans, like eating. We've changed our relationship to one of the main things that we do. And I'm sure if we had a sleep expert here, he would tell us, oh, we've changed how we relate to the day-night cycle through our technology, and that's changed how we sleep, and that's affected tons of things that we couldn't have foreseen because we didn't really realizing we were taking for granted there wouldn't be anything unusual that would be consequent from altering our relationship to one of these most fundamental activities that humans engage in. Anyway, so sorry, that was a bit of an aside. And yeah, I feel like people do feel that, how our relationship to some of the most basic things in our lives has been fundamentally changed or destabilized. And that's part of what drives some people to actually recomplicate their lives or go backwards. And some people are just like, maybe pushing forwards isn't always the direction I want to go, because maybe you're actually driving the wrong way down a road. And so people said, no, I want to change which road I'm on. And so you do see people saying, I'm going to do things a more difficult way, whether that's I'm going to start really cooking everything from scratch and I'm going to get really into that, or I'm going to start making my own candles or some craft. People get those enthusiasms for all sorts of things. I want to learn to make this or make that myself. It's like, well, you could go buy those things. You could buy all of those things. You could have technological substitutes for all that. You don't need to do the work yourself. You don't need to live like it's the 1800s. But people in some way are like, actually, there's something I miss about it. And you know what? There's something I find meaningful in the way that it relates to me, in the way it changes my relationship to the world and the world around me. And they're looking for something. And you also see that with education, people who decide, well, I want to do homeschool. Or maybe it's even just people who say, well, I want to go in and help at my kid's school. A humongous amount of the people who work at the school I've been working at have kids at that school. And that also includes, the paraprofessionals, the people who just kind of help do various tasks, keep an eye on kids, keep an eye on the recess. Most of them are just parents who have taken these positions. They just say, I want to be there. I want to be around it. I want to be around my kids. I want to be around kids in general. And you know what? You can do it and get paid for it. Not gigantic amounts of money, but you can get paid to do what you kind of want to be doing anyway and what you find fulfilling. So that also, I think, is an example of saying, well, I could just use the system to have my kids be gone, but actually I want to complicate it. I want to get involved, or I want to even do it myself. Same thing, home improvement. You could pay people to do these things, but a lot of people actually find an enormous amount of fulfillment out of doing them. And I will say that is me too. I didn't know that. I didn't expect that. As I've said in one of my posts, never a handy person, but I became handy and it was a lot of fun. I found a lot of fulfillment in it. Because the problem in life, this was something that came up talking with my fifth graders today. We went to see Tuck Everlasting, which I'm not going to get into the details of it, but it does involve this immortal family and someone who's basically given the choice to potentially join them if they want. And there's a lot of ways you can analyze this story, but one thing it was making me think about was that the problem isn't life or quantity of life or even really pleasure or security now. Pleasantness, we've solved a lot of these problems. If with not that much effort, you can actually do just fine on all those things. Like, we know what you need to do, and it's not that complicated. The problem is meaning. And so for this immortal family who no longer has to worry about either the amount of time and who knows that they're not changing, and their problem has in many ways just become meaning, what keeps their lives meaningful. So that's the problem in modern society. The problem isn't how do I get food, because there's a million ways I could get food. There's a million restaurants who would love to provide it for me. There's food everywhere. There's food. There's food everywhere. Maybe it's more expensive now than it used to be, but it's not like there isn't food. But the problem of your relationship to it, what does it mean? That can become a problem. That is why I think some people are cooking. They want to restore the meaningfulness of their relationship to food, to this big, important part of things that humans do, part of the human experience. They want to change the terms of their relationship to it. They don't just want it to be a product that they consume. Or even if it is a product they consume, they don't just want it to be the simplest thing it could be. People go seeking adventure, and so they become foodies and restaurant-y type people who are always chasing some new experience. They want this relationship to food to be more meaningful, and that's what they're chasing. And so more and more, once you've solved technologically the problems of having something or knowing how to get something, then the problem isn't really that thing anymore. It's your relationship to it, and how are you going to have it be meaningful? If people want to have kids, they can have kids, most likely. If people want to have food, they can have food. You can probably have houses, but how do we relate to them? How do we find ourselves to be happy with them? Anyway, one of the flaws of abundance and access is jealousies, resentments, concerns over who has more than I have, because what we have doesn't seem that meaningful to us anymore. Small things used to seem very meaningful. You read old books, and I even thinking about my own childhood, getting a sack at Christmas that had a Red Delicious apple and peanuts in the shell and a few little old-fashioned style candies. And I'll be honest, I hated all of those things. I thought Red Delicious apples were gross. I didn't really like peanuts. I didn't even understand how you're supposed to eat them. I thought you ate them with the shell, so I was like, these are a pain to eat. And I didn't really like candy that much, especially hard candy. I had no interest in it, but it meant so much to me. It seemed so meaningful. It seemed so special. And that's where you read and you see, those old corn cob dolls, and it's like, this is literally just a corn cob with like a piece of fabric wrapped around it with like a little ribbon tying it. It is so simple. It is so unfancy. It's not even especially human-like. But you look at it and you realize that corn cob meant so much to someone. That corn cob was loved. It was significant. It played this important and fulfilling role in the mind and the imagination of this child. And so you see, well, it's like you were resource poor, but meaning rich. You really knew how to extract the meaning from that relationship. And so part of the problem that we have now is we are resource rich, and that's actually allowed our extraction abilities to atrophy. We've lost our relational abilities that allow us to extract the meaning from those resources. And so people can become very jaded, and you've been to all sorts of restaurants. You become so hard to impress or please, and actually you're getting less and less enjoyment for some people out of it, or you have to spend enormous amounts of money to do it. Because as I say, we become very resource rich, but that's meant we don't have to work very hard. We don't have to learn how to relate to these things, how to extract the meaning and the joy from them. And so that is why some people, of course, do like going back and reading, old-fashioned books, Little House on the Prairie, and you see these people, and it's like, look, I got a piece of nice new fabric for Christmas, and it's like, oh, that's the most amazing thing. And for us, we're like, oh, how can they be so happy with it? And it's like, well, maybe they're frauds. And I'm like, no, actually, they genuinely do seem to be happy. We would be frauds, because the real thing we should be turning around and saying, oh, wow, look how much happiness they are able to extract from their relationships. These very simple things. And why is it so hard for me? What has atrophied about me that it makes it so hard for me to relate to these things meaningfully, to have these meaningful relationships with people, family, food, where we live, neighborhoods, things you read, whatever it is, your work, what being in a resource poor environment forced people to develop their own capacities more, which we don't actually have to as much because we're catered to so much. So that's kind of the unanticipated downside of success, which that's life. It's a repeating pattern. It is a problem. There is a downside to actually getting everything that you want. Anyway, I know I'm wandering. I'll try to pull it all back together. What were my main points? I don't even know myself. I didn't have a clear idea when I started out. I think it was, one, this idea that sometimes being resource rich can make you relationally poor and meaning poor. Not that the meaning isn't there, because obviously, well, someone who finds immense delight in getting an orange in their stocking, and my kids can get 50 buckets of candy, are they actually any happier? It's not clear that they are. People had to develop this innate capacity to extract meaning from things, and as I said, to have a certain kind of relationship. And now we just don't have to work as hard. And so we become much harder to impress. And it's because we become relationally lazy in the world of meaning. We don't have to work that hard to extract things from it. We expect ourselves to be catered to more. Someone could get a new ribbon or a dress, and it would be the most amazing thing in the world. Now it's like, well, I can go and get out 50 new dresses, but, I'm not really that excited about any of them, and I'll probably forget about all of them very quickly because we have things much more that are far more disposable. We don't hang on to them. We don't have these long-term relationships with them. We don't keep extracting meaning from this piece of clothing which I wore, and I wore it for 10 years, and I handed it on to my son or my daughter, and we create a world of disposable objects, which basically means disposable relationship and disposable meaningfulness. And we fill that by just having to always get more stuff to fill its place. More new restaurants, new pieces of clothing, new experiences, new TV shows, instead of something that we could nourish ourselves on. We were very good at extracting. We had just a few books, but boy, we really extracted every drop of it, and thought and delight from it for years and years. So, as I said, there's this complexity that comes with the proliferation of whatever kind of resources it are that people find meaningful. Okay, so that's topic number one. And then my second point was, I think it would be a good idea for people to spend some time at schools, because excellent preparation for parenting, excellent understanding of humanity that you gain from it, understanding of people, understanding of the work that is going on that you're not necessarily seeing, of skills that really you probably need. Also, delights that you might be missing out on. Those little kids, they grab hold of your heart. I realized today as I was just working with them and I was looking around, I was like, oh, I could see how it would be so easy to just fall in love with these people and this place and these kids, even as difficult as they can be. And even though I would say I'm not someone who's really naturally that way, and I was never like, oh, I want to have kids so much. I was never that way. But after just a few weeks of hanging around the schools, I'm like, oh, I could see why you would fall in love with this and fall in love with doing this and with the children and being around them. I get it. And I don't think that's a bad thing to awaken and learn about in yourself. And maybe it could be a way to awaken your own understanding of the value of family and children and parenting and that whole process that is what it is to be human, because what it is to be human is really carrying on the life of humanity. That's our most basic and fundamental work that we have, is family, whatever stage of life we're in. And then, as I said, the third thing is just I've been teaching and it's a lot of fun. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing this YouTube channel if I didn't have some interest in blabbing away at people about all sorts of random things. Hopefully, I'll be able to learn some things from it and bring some new insights. Hopefully, I'll still have time to work things into my schedule and be able to put more posts, because I also really enjoy making these posts and putting them out there. And I'd say one of the most meaningful things that I've gotten back, even from doing these, is not, it's not like hardly anyone is seeing my posts, but even those people who do are somewhat anonymous. Well, one of my young relatives actually watched one of my posts. Someone who's a high schooler, and then wanted to talk to me about it and say that they appreciate it. And you know what? I was surprised to suddenly realize, wow, actually the fact that she got something out of it was more meaningful to me than, thousands of views would have been. And that's when you realize, oh, it really is nice to communicate to the young. It really is nice to engage with them, to hear their thoughts about things. Anyway, hope to see you again. See you next time.